The billionaire CEO lived in a world of glass buildings, luxury cars, and endless meetings. Every day, his life was filled with decisions that affected thousands of people. Yet inside, he often felt a strange emptiness he could not explain. He had everything money could buy, but there was one thing he had lost 10 years ago that he could never replace: his wife. She had been the love of his life, the one person who understood him completely, but in his obsession with work and his stubborn pride, he had driven her away. The memory of her smile, the warmth of her hand, and the sound of her laughter often visited him in quiet moments, haunting him with the regret of what he had lost. One rainy afternoon, he decided to take a break from the office, needing some air and a different view. He drove through streets he rarely visited, streets that were far from the polished avenues of the city center. The buildings were old, the paint peeling, and the sidewalks crowded with people going about their daily struggles. As he drove slowly, his eyes scanned the surroundings, observing life from behind his tinted windows. That's when he saw them. 4 young girls were playing near a broken fence, their laughter cutting through the dull rhythm of the rain. They wore clothes that were clearly too small or too worn, but their energy and joy were undeniable. Something about them stopped him in his tracks. Their faces, their gestures, even the way they moved, it was impossible to ignore. They looked exactly like the woman he had loved and lost 10 years ago. At first, he thought it was a trick of the light, a fleeting resemblance caused by his longing. But as he watched more closely, the feeling grew stronger, almost unbearable. The way they tilted their heads, the way one of them laughed with her hand covering her mouth, it was the same charm that had drawn him to his wife all those years ago. His heart raced as memories flooded back. He remembered the arguments, the long nights in separate rooms, the phone calls filled with silence instead of warmth. He remembered the day she left, the way the door closed behind her, and the sound of it echoing in his mind for years. And now, here were these 4 girls, living reminders of the woman he had let go. The coincidence was shocking, almost surreal. He couldn't take his eyes off them. They ran, they fell, they helped each other up, and he watched, realizing that they relied on each other, just as his wife had relied on her own sisters when they were young. There was a familiarity in their bond that was hard to explain. He felt a strange mix of joy and sorrow, curiosity and fear. Could it be possible that they were somehow connected to her? Was fate giving him a second chance to see pieces of her life again? Or was this just a cruel trick of his mind? Unable to leave the sight behind, he parked his car at a distance and stayed, watching them interact. They were clearly from a difficult background, their clothes torn, their faces smudged with dirt, yet their spirits were unbroken. One of them picked up a small, tattered ball and threw it to another, who caught it with a laugh, her eyes sparkling, despite the hardships around her. The CEO felt a pang of emotion he hadn't felt in years. This was life in its purest form, unfiltered by wealth, power, or influence. It was raw, real, and painfully beautiful. As he watched, he noticed that the girls' movements and expressions triggered memories of his wife. The way one of them tilted her head while thinking, the quick smile of another when she succeeded in a small task, even the way they comforted each other. It was uncanny. He felt a strange pull, a need to know more about them, to understand who they were, and why they reminded him so vividly of the woman he had lost. It was as if a part of his past had returned in the form of these children, fragile yet strong. The CEO's mind began to race with questions. Who were they? Where did they come from? Why were they alone on the streets? And most importantly, could there be a connection to his wife? Or was this merely coincidence? His heart told him to approach carefully, but his curiosity and growing attachment made him consider taking action. He realized that his life had always been about control, but this was something he could not control. He could not command fate, and he could not dictate how these lives unfolded. All he could do was observe, and perhaps find a way to help Dot as the rain eased and sunlight peeked through the clouds. The girls ran off toward a narrow alley, disappearing from view. The CEO remained in his car, feeling a mix of relief and disappointment. He had seen enough to know that he could not ignore this encounter. Something inside him had been awakened, a longing not for wealth or power, but for connection, for family, for redemption. The past he had buried for so long now demanded attention, and the presence of these 4 girls made it impossible to continue living as if nothing had happened. He returned to his office later that day, but his thoughts were elsewhere. Every decision he made, every meeting he attended, felt meaningless compared to the vision of those girls. He knew that he needed to learn more about them, to understand their lives, and perhaps to atone for his own mistakes. He couldn't explain why he felt this way, whether it was destiny, coincidence, or a chance to heal old wounds, but he was determined to find out. Over the next few days, he used his resources discreetly. He asked contacts in social services, local shelters, and even neighborhood shops, trying to gather information without drawing attention to himself. He discovered that the girls were indeed orphans, struggling to survive without guidance or support. They had formed a tight-knit family, relying on each other for safety, comfort, and companionship. The more he learned, the more he felt connected to them, as if their lives were intertwined with his own past in ways he could not yet understand out at night. He would sit alone in his high-rise apartment, looking out over the city, replaying memories of his wife, and imagining what these girls' lives might be like if someone were to guide and protect them. He realized that he had spent years chasing success, while neglecting what truly mattered: love, compassion, and human connection. The sight of these girls had reminded him of everything he had lost, and he could not ignore the chance to make a difference now. One evening, he decided to take a small step. He returned to the streets where he had first seen the girls, hoping to catch a glimpse of them again. As he waited, he felt a mix of hope and anxiety. What if they ran away? What if they didn't need him? What if he was making a mistake? Yet deep down, he knew that he could not turn back. He had been given an opportunity, and he had to act with care, empathy, and respect for their lives. After a long wait, he saw them emerging from an alley, laughing and chasing each other in the fading light. Their energy and joy, despite their hardships, filled him with a sense of wonder. He felt both fear and excitement as he stepped forward slowly, ensuring he did not startle them. He introduced himself gently, speaking in a kind and calm voice. The girls froze, wary of the stranger, but curiosity shone in their eyes. He smiled, keeping a respectful distance, and offered small gestures of kindness, a warm coat for one of them, a snack for another. Gradually, they began to trust him, responding with shy smiles and tentative gestures. In that moment, the billionaire CEO realized that this encounter was the beginning of something much larger than himself. It was a chance to mend old wounds, to connect with lives that reminded him of love he had lost, and perhaps to find a new sense of purpose. He understood that wealth and power could not buy happiness, but compassion, patience, and genuine care could change lives, including his own. And as he watched the 4 girls play together, he knew that the journey ahead would be challenging, emotional, and unpredictable, yet filled with hope and the possibility of redemption. After the first encounter, the billionaire CEO could not stop thinking about the 4 girls. Their laughter, their energy, and their resemblance to the woman he had loved haunted him in a way that felt both painful and comforting. He returned to the streets several times over the next few days, always watching from a distance, careful not to frighten them or intrude on their small world. The more he observed, the more he realized that their lives were far from easy. They scavenged for food, slept wherever they could find shelter, and yet, despite all the hardships, they maintained an unspoken bond that kept them together. The CEO felt a deep urge to learn more. He wanted to know their names, their stories, and the circumstances that had brought them to the streets. Using his resources quietly, he asked around the neighborhood, spoke to local shopkeepers, and contacted social workers who sometimes helped children in need. Gradually, he began piecing together fragments of their lives. He learned that the girls were indeed orphans, forced to depend on each other after losing their parents to illness and misfortune. Each girl had a unique personality. The eldest was protective and mature beyond her years, keeping the others in line. The middle two were playful, curious, and mischievous. And the youngest, though small and timid, showed remarkable courage and determination. The more he learned, the stronger his emotions became. Watching them, he couldn't help but see reflections of his wife in their faces and gestures. He remembered her laughter, the way she cared for others, and the warmth she radiated even in the hardest times. The resemblance was uncanny. It was almost as if fate had placed these girls in his life to remind him of everything he had lost, and perhaps to give him a chance to make amends, even indirectly. Despite his growing concern for them, he knew he could not approach them recklessly. The streets were harsh, and trust had to be earned. He thought carefully about his next steps. He wanted to offer help without taking away their independence or scaring them away. He also needed to understand more about their history, to see if there was any connection to his wife. His curiosity became a quiet obsession, not just to see the girls again, but to understand who they really were and why they had entered his life, now to gather more information. He hired a private investigator who could observe them discreetly. The investigator reported that the girls were not only surviving, but also looking out for each other, forming a small, self-made family that kept them strong. They faced daily struggles for food, safety, and warmth, yet their spirits remained unbroken. The CEO was deeply moved. He had never truly experienced this kind of resilience up close. In his world of wealth and luxury, struggles were temporary and solvable. But the girls faced challenges that demanded courage and ingenuity at every moment. The CEO also began to reflect on his own past, recalling the moments he had spent with his wife before she left. She had been gentle yet firm, kind yet wise, and she had always found joy in small, everyday things. He saw those same qualities mirrored in the girls. Their bond, their laughter, and even their mischief reminded him of the life he had thrown away. For the first time in years, he felt a deep yearning not for business success or public admiration, but for connection and love. One evening, he returned to the streets, carrying warm blankets and food. He watched the girls from a distance as they played near a broken fence, laughing despite the cold. The eldest noticed him first and frowned slightly, unsure who he was or why he was there. The other girls followed her lead, their expressions cautious and wary. He remained still, giving them time to adjust, and then slowly approached, speaking softly. He introduced himself and offered the blankets and food. At first, they hesitated, unsure if they could trust him, but hunger and curiosity slowly overcame fear. They accepted the gifts with shy gratitude, and he felt a warmth spread through him that he hadn't felt in years as he interacted with them. He realized that trust had to be built gradually. He could not expect them to open up immediately, and he had to respect their autonomy. Over the next few days, he continued to visit them quietly, offering small acts of kindness without overwhelming them. Sometimes he brought books or games. Other times, he simply watched from a distance, making sure they were safe. Slowly, the girls began to recognize him and respond with smiles and cautious gestures. The eldest even started speaking with him, asking questions about his life, his work, and why he seemed to care so much about them. Through these conversations, the CEO learned more about their past. They shared stories of their parents, their struggles on the streets, and their dreams for the future. Their words were honest and unfiltered, filled with hope despite the hardships they had endured. He listened intently, feeling both sorrow and admiration. These girls had faced more challenges than most adults, and yet they carried themselves with dignity and courage. Their resilience struck a chord deep within him, reminding him of the qualities he had once admired in his wife Dot as days turned into weeks. The CEO began to feel a deeper connection with the girls. He started imagining ways to help them more significantly, not just with food and clothing, but with education, shelter, and opportunities for a better life. Yet, he also understood the importance of approaching this carefully. He could not force his presence into their lives or make them feel indebted. He needed to show that his intentions were genuine and that he respected their independence. During this time, he also started reflecting on the mistakes he had made in his own life. He thought about how his obsession with success had driven a wedge between him and his wife, how pride had prevented him from apologizing or seeking reconciliation, and how his choices had consequences that extended far beyond himself. Seeing these girls, he realized that life had a way of giving second chances, even if they came in unexpected forms. He felt a quiet determination to make a positive difference, to offer the guidance and support they lacked, and perhaps, in doing so, to heal some of the wounds within himself. One afternoon, the eldest girl approached him cautiously, while the others played nearby. She asked why he cared about them so much, and why he had been watching them. The CEO hesitated at first, unsure how to answer without frightening her, but then spoke honestly. He told her that he had seen them, seen their courage, and felt a need to help. He admitted that he had lost someone very important in his life, and that seeing them reminded him of the love he had once known. The girl listened quietly, her eyes thoughtful and searching. Though she did not fully understand, she sensed the sincerity in his words. This conversation marked a turning point. The girls began to accept his presence more openly, and he started to feel a sense of belonging he had not experienced in years. He realized that the connection he felt was not just about the past. It was about creating something meaningful in the present. He began to plan small steps to integrate into their lives in a way that would be respectful and helpful. Not imposing Dot in the evenings, he reflected on the growing bond he shared with the girls. He thought about the path ahead, knowing it would be filled with challenges, emotions, and difficult decisions. Yet he also felt hope that he could make a difference, hope that he could create a sense of family and love that had been missing from both their lives and his own. He knew that the journey would be long, but for the first time in a decade, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The CEO also realized that he could not ignore the possibility of a deeper connection. The uncanny resemblance between the girls and his wife could not be coincidence, and he began to wonder if their lives were intertwined with his past in ways he had yet to discover. This thought both excited and frightened him. He knew that uncovering the truth would require patience, sensitivity, and courage. Yet, he felt ready to face whatever truths lay ahead, driven by a desire to do what was right, to protect and support the girls, and to confront the lingering regrets of his past Dot as part 2 of his journey ended. The CEO understood that he was standing at the edge of a life-changing discovery. The 4 street girls were no longer just strangers. They had become a mirror reflecting his lost love, his past mistakes, and the possibilities for redemption. With careful steps, empathy, and a growing bond, he was beginning to enter a world that demanded not money or power, but heart, patience, and genuine care. The story of these girls and the man who had once lost everything was unfolding, and the next chapter promised both challenges and hope, shaping the lives of all involved in ways that neither time nor fortune could have predicted Dot as the days passed. The bond between the billionaire CEO and the four girls grew slowly but steadily. They were still cautious, but there were moments of warmth and connection that made him feel like he was stepping into a family he had never truly known. He continued to visit them, bringing food, blankets, and small gifts, but he always made sure to respect their independence and space. The girls were curious about him, asking questions about his life, his work, and the strange world he came from. He answered gently, not revealing too much, but sharing enough to let them feel safe and understood. One afternoon, while sitting on the steps of a small abandoned building where the girls often played, the eldest spoke up. She asked him why he had taken so much interest in their lives. His heart tightened as he thought about how to answer. He decided to speak honestly, telling them that he had once lost someone very important to him, someone who had meant everything, and seeing them had reminded him of that love and the mistakes he had made. The girls listened quietly, not fully understanding, but they sensed the sincerity in his voice. This moment marked a turning point, as they began to see him not just as a stranger or someone with money, but as someone who genuinely cared for them. The CEO also began to notice more details about each girl, realizing how their personalities mirrored qualities he had once admired in his wife. The eldest had a sense of responsibility and maturity that reminded him of her steadiness. The middle two were lively, playful, and full of curiosity, similar to the way she would approach the world with wonder. And the youngest, though quiet and hesitant, carried an inner courage and determination that reminded him of her resilience. These connections deepened his feelings of both nostalgia and hope. He felt as though fate had given him a chance to see parts of her spirit alive in these young lives. Determined to understand more, he began quietly investigating their past. He hired social workers to look into their family history, without revealing his identity. Over time, he discovered small but significant clues. The girls' parents had been close to someone he once knew, and there were hints that their lives were more connected to his wife than he could have imagined. The thought filled him with a mixture of fear and excitement. He realized that he was not just witnessing a coincidence, but might be stepping into a web of fate that linked the past and present. Meanwhile, he started finding ways to subtly help the girls beyond material needs. He arranged for access to better food, occasional health checkups, and opportunities for education without making it feel forced or like charity. Each small gesture was carefully measured to build trust and ensure that the girls felt supported, not dependent. Slowly, they began to show glimpses of their personalities. More openly, smiles became easier, laughter more frequent, and small conversations about dreams and hopes started to emerge. He found himself listening to their stories with rapt attention, often marveling at their strength and resilience. Each story, each laugh, and each tear made him feel more connected to them. One day, as he helped the youngest girl with a small puzzle she had found, she looked up at him with wide, trusting eyes and asked, "Do you know someone like our mom?" The question caught him off guard. He paused, carefully choosing his words. He told her that he had known someone very special, someone he had loved deeply, and that sometimes life took people in different directions. He explained that while he could not change the past, he could be there to help her and her sisters in the present. The girl nodded slowly, seeming to understand in her own way, and went back to her puzzle, feeling reassured by his honesty. The CEO also began reflecting on the mistakes he had made in his own life. He thought about how his ambition had driven him away from the woman he loved, how pride had kept him from apologizing, and how his decisions had affected not just him, but those around him. Seeing these girls, he realized that redemption was possible in ways he had never imagined. He could not bring back the past, but he could influence the future. He felt a deep sense of responsibility and a desire to protect and nurture them, not as a wealthy stranger, but as someone who genuinely cared for their well-being. As weeks turned into months, the bond deepened further. The girls began to accept his presence more openly, even inviting him into their small world without hesitation. He shared stories of his life in simple terms, making them laugh and sometimes sharing lessons he had learned the hard way. They began to trust him, revealing small secrets and dreams they had never shared with anyone else. Each day spent together was a step toward building a family-like connection that neither time nor wealth could have created alone. However, the CEO knew that he had to be cautious. He could not overwhelm the girls or force them to accept him. Their trust had been hard-earned, and he respected the fact that their lives on the streets had taught them to be wary of strangers. He focused on listening, understanding, and gently guiding them, rather than controlling or imposing. This approach slowly helped the girls feel safe and supported, and in turn, he felt a sense of purpose and fulfillment he had not known in years. One evening, he learned from a social worker that there were documents and photos, suggesting a closer link between the girls and his wife's past than he had anticipated. The possibility that they might be related, perhaps nieces or children connected to our family, filled him with a mixture of hope and apprehension. He realized that any direct connection could change everything, but he also understood that he had to approach this carefully. He needed to confirm the facts before revealing anything, and he wanted to ensure that the girls felt safe and secure throughout the process. The next time he met them, he noticed that the eldest girl had become more confident, asking questions about the world beyond their neighborhood. She wanted to learn, explore, and understand. The CEO encouraged this curiosity, offering small lessons about life, problem-solving, and self-reliance. He shared stories from his own life, not to boast, but to show them that mistakes could be lessons, and that courage and perseverance mattered more than wealth or status. The girls listened with fascination, their trust and admiration for him growing each day as he continued to observe and interact with them. He realized that his connection with these girls was changing him profoundly. The walls he had built around his heart over the years were slowly crumbling. He felt emotions he had buried: joy, compassion, vulnerability, and hope. He had spent so long pursuing success at the cost of relationships, and now he understood that real fulfillment came from human connection and care. The girls had awakened a part of him that he thought he had lost forever, and he was grateful for the unexpected second chance they represented. One afternoon, the eldest girl brought up a story about her mother, sharing memories she had of a woman who had always been kind, strong, and full of love. The CEO listened quietly, realizing that the stories aligned with what he remembered of his wife. The resemblance in values, in character, and even in the smallest gestures was uncanny. He felt a mixture of awe and trepidation. Could it be that fate had indeed brought these girls into his life to reconnect him with a part of his past? The thought filled him with hope, but he knew he had to tread carefully, ensuring that any revelations would not disrupt the fragile trust he had built as Part 3 of the story unfolded. The CEO understood that he was entering a deeper, more complex chapter of his life. The girls were no longer just reminders of the past. They had become mirrors of the love, loss, and hope he had carried within him for years. His focus shifted from merely observing to nurturing, protecting, and guiding with patience and empathy. He felt a growing sense of responsibility, not just to support them materially, but to help them navigate life, build confidence, and heal from the hardships they had endured. Evenings became moments of reflection for him. He would sit in his office or apartment, thinking about the journey so far and the road ahead. He knew there would be challenges, difficult conversations, and emotional hurdles. But he also knew that this connection offered a chance for redemption, growth, and genuine happiness. The 4 girls had entered his life unexpectedly, but they had changed it forever, showing him that love, care, and human connection were more powerful than any wealth or achievement. As the sun set over the city one evening, he watched the girls from a distance, seeing their laughter and bond. He felt a deep sense of purpose and an unwavering commitment to be there for them. The journey was far from over, and many questions still remained about their past and possible connections to his wife. Yet he knew one thing with certainty. He would face whatever came next with patience, empathy, and an open heart. The story of these 4 girls and the billionaire who had once lost everything was evolving into a tale of trust, care, and the possibility of redemption. That promised to touch the lives of all involved in ways that neither time nor wealth could have anticipated. The billionaire CEO's bond with the 4 girls had grown stronger with every passing day. What started as quiet observation had turned into small, meaningful interactions filled with trust, laughter, and careful guidance. Yet he knew there was more to do. The girls' lives were still fragile, filled with the struggles of survival on the streets, and he wanted to find ways to give them more stability without taking away their independence. He understood that helping them meant more than providing food or shelter. It meant giving them hope, teaching them resilience, and showing them that life could be brighter. He started making more concrete plans. With the help of trusted social workers, he arranged for access to a small, safe space where the girls could study and play, away from the dangers of the streets. He ensured it was not a formal institution, so they wouldn't feel confined, but a place where they could learn, grow, and feel cared for. The girls were hesitant at first, unsure about trusting someone so different from their usual world, but the CEO took things slowly. He visited them daily, helping them with small lessons, reading stories, and encouraging their curiosity. Over time, their laughter filled the space, and he felt a sense of fulfillment he had never experienced in his corporate life. During these days, the CEO also learned more about the girls' individual personalities. The eldest, always protective and responsible, showed him how she had taken care of her sisters, often sacrificing her own comfort. The middle 2 were playful and inquisitive, asking endless questions about the world. And the youngest, though quiet, demonstrated courage beyond her years, facing challenges with a determination that reminded him of his wife. Watching them, he couldn't help but notice the striking similarities between their character traits and the woman he had loved and lost. It was as if pieces of her spirit were living through these children. The CEO knew that his past could not be ignored. He spent quiet evenings reflecting on the mistakes he had made, the pride that had driven him away from love, and the consequences of his actions. He realized that he had been given an unexpected chance to do something right this time. The girls had entered his life in a way that demanded care, responsibility, and empathy, qualities he had neglected for too long. He felt a renewed determination to guide them gently and to build trust that could last a lifetime. One day, the eldest girl asked him a question that surprised him. She wanted to know if he had ever lost someone he truly loved. His heart ached at the memory, but he chose to answer honestly, sharing that he had made mistakes, and that someone very important had left his life because of them. He spoke about regret, growth, and the importance of learning from past choices. The girls listened, absorbing every word, and in that moment, the connection deepened. They began to understand that he was not just a benefactor, but someone who could empathize with loss and understand what it meant to long for love and connection. The CEO also began to notice signs that the girls' lives might be connected to his wife in ways he had not fully understood before. Through subtle inquiries and conversations with social workers, he discovered fragments of the past that suggested family ties. The realization was both exciting and intimidating. He knew he had to tread carefully, ensuring that any revelations would not disrupt the fragile bond he had built. At the same time, he felt a sense of destiny guiding him, as if fate had brought him here to reconcile not just with these young lives, but with a part of his own past. As the girls grew more comfortable with him, they began to share stories about their dreams. The eldest wanted to become a teacher, the middle two imagined adventures in cities far away, and the youngest dreamt of helping other children like themselves. The CEO listened with admiration and encouragement. He offered guidance without imposing, teaching them about possibilities beyond their immediate struggles, and helping them understand that the world could be kinder and more generous than they had ever imagined. Each dream shared, each smile, and each expression of hope reinforced his commitment to helping them. Meanwhile, he began making arrangements for a more permanent solution. He rented a small, safe home on the outskirts of the city where the girls could live, study, and play without fear. He ensured the environment was nurturing, filled with warmth, safety, and opportunities for learning. He hired caretakers who were compassionate and patient, but he remained deeply involved, spending time with the girls every day, guiding them, playing with them, and encouraging their growth. Slowly, the home transformed into a place of laughter and learning, a stark contrast to the harsh streets they had once called home. The CEO also faced challenges. There were times when the girls struggled to trust him fully, moments when they reverted to old habits of caution and suspicion. There were days when they argued among themselves, or when the memories of their hardships surfaced in tears and frustration. He faced these moments with patience, listening, comforting, and guiding them through conflict with empathy. Each challenge became an opportunity to strengthen the bond and teach them about resilience, compassion, and the power of forgiveness. During this time, he reflected often on his wife. The girl's presence stirred memories of her laughter, kindness, and unwavering spirit. He realized that while he could never undo the past, he could honor her memory by nurturing the qualities he had admired in her through these children. Their lives had become intertwined with his own journey of redemption. Each small victory, each moment of joy shared, was a step toward healing not just the girl's wounds, but his own. One afternoon, the CEO took the girls to a nearby park. They ran freely, laughed, and played, feeling safe and carefree for the first time in years. The youngest clung to his hand briefly, looking up at him with trust and affection. The eldest walked beside him, sharing thoughts about school and friends, while the middle two chased each other around a tree, giggling. Watching them, he felt a profound sense of connection, understanding that love was not about perfection, wealth, or status, but about presence, care, and genuine attention. The more time he spent with them, the more he realized that his life had changed completely. The rigid, isolated existence of the past had given way to a life rich with emotion, empathy, and purpose. He understood that the road ahead would still hold challenges, questions about family, the past, and the connections to his wife, but he felt ready to face them. The love and trust he had built with the girls were not conditional on wealth or authority, but on shared experiences, patience, and understanding. As Part 4 unfolded, the CEO knew he had come far. He had created a safe space for the girls, nurtured their trust, and guided them toward a brighter future. He had confronted his past mistakes and was learning to embrace patience, empathy, and care in a way that transformed not just their lives, but his own. He also understood that the coming days would bring revelations, challenges, and decisions that would test the bonds they had formed. Yet, he felt a quiet confidence that together they could face whatever lay ahead. The journey of these 4 girls and the billionaire who had once lost everything was far from over, but the foundations of trust, love, and redemption were firmly in place, promising a future filled with hope, resilience, and unexpected connections. The billionaire CEO had spent months carefully nurturing the trust and well-being of the 4 girls. What had started as cautious observation had grown into a deep, meaningful bond that brought joy, laughter, and purpose into his life. The girls had begun to flourish in their new environment, a safe and nurturing home where they could learn, play, and dream without fear. Their trust in him was now evident in small gesture smiles that greeted him in the morning, laughter shared over simple games, and the eagerness to tell him about their day and their dreams. He noticed how each of them had grown not just physically, but emotionally. The eldest had become more confident in her decisions, learning to take initiative while still caring for her sisters. The middle two were exploring their interests, reading books and asking endless questions about the world beyond their neighborhood. And the youngest, once timid and hesitant, now faced challenges with courage, her eyes shining with curiosity and determination. Watching them, he felt a sense of pride that was different from any business achievement he had ever known. It was a pride rooted in love, care, and the knowledge that he had played a part in helping them grow. The CEO also reflected on his own journey over these months. The experience had changed him profoundly. He had learned patience, empathy, and humility. The walls he had built around his heart over the years had softened, allowing him to connect deeply with the lives of these young girls. He realized that true fulfillment did not come from wealth or status, but from genuine human connection, compassion, and the ability to make a positive difference in the lives of others. One evening, as they sat together after dinner, the eldest girl asked a question that had been on all their minds. "Do you know anything about our family? About where we really come from?" The CEO took a deep breath, knowing that the time had come to share the truths he had uncovered. He spoke carefully, explaining what he had learned from social workers and records, without overwhelming them or making them feel scared. He told them that their parents had connections to someone he had known long ago, and that there were possibilities of family, ties that might explain the striking resemblance they had to a woman he once loved deeply. The girls listened, wide-eyed and silent, processing the information. It was a lot to take in, but the way they huddled together, supporting each other, reminded him of the resilience and unity that had kept them strong on the streets. He reassured them that whatever the truth was, he would be there to support and guide them. They were family now, in the ways that truly mattered through trust, care, and love. In the following weeks, the CEO continued to nurture their growth while gently exploring the family connections he had discovered. He arranged meetings with distant relatives, always ensuring the girls' comfort and consent. These meetings were delicate, filled with emotions, questions, and the cautious excitement of discovering roots they had never known. Some connections were joyful, filled with shared memories and stories that helped the girls understand more about their parents. Other meetings were more difficult, bringing bittersweet realizations and the reminder of past hardships. Through it all, the CEO remained a steady presence, offering guidance, comfort, and reassurance. Meanwhile, the girls' lives were transforming in ways he could hardly have imagined. They were attending a small local school, exploring hobbies, and developing friendships outside their home. They laughed more freely, slept more soundly, and spoke of dreams that once seemed impossible. The eldest dreamed of becoming a teacher to help other children. The middle two imagined adventures and careers that could take them across the world. And the youngest spoke of helping children like themselves find hope and safety. Each dream shared reinforced the CEO's belief, and the importance of nurturing not just survival, but imagination, ambition, and hope. The CEO also reflected on the impact these months had had on himself. He had faced the regrets of his past, acknowledged mistakes, and discovered a path to redemption. He realized that while he could never change the choices he had made 10 years ago, he could influence the future positively. His life had been transformed not by wealth or business success, but by love, connection, and the responsibility of caring for lives that now mattered deeply to him. One day, the CEO took the girls to the place where he had first noticed them on the streets months ago. He wanted them to see how far they had come, to appreciate the journey they had made together. They walked through the familiar streets, remembering the moments of fear and struggle, and noticing the changes in their lives. The girls shared their feelings, expressing gratitude, excitement, and even a little disbelief at the transformation. The eldest hugged him tightly, the middle two giggled and held hands, and the youngest looked up at him with eyes full of trust and love. In that moment, he understood that they had become more than just children he cared for. They were a family in the truest sense, connected not by blood alone, but by shared experiences. Love and cared out. As the day ended, the CEO reflected on the lessons he had learned. He had discovered the power of patience, the importance of empathy, and the enduring strength of trust. He realized that life was not measured by wealth or status, but by the love we give and receive, the support we provide, and the lives we touch. The girls had changed him as much as he had changed them, and together, they had created a bond that was unbreakable. In the evenings, as he watched the girls play, read, or share stories, he felt a profound sense of peace. He knew that the road ahead would still hold challenges, questions about family, unexpected hardships, and the complexities of growing up. Yet, he was confident that with trust, guidance, and love, they could face whatever came next. The girls had already shown incredible resilience, and he had seen the spark of hope and courage that would guide them into the future. The CEO also carried reflections about his lost wife. While she could never return, the girls had brought pieces of her spirit into his life, her courage, her laughter, and her unwavering kindness. In nurturing them, he honored her memory, not by dwelling on what was lost, but by building something meaningful in the present. He realized that redemption was not about reversing the past, but creating a future filled with care, connection, and hope. Months turned into a year, and the CEO saw remarkable growth in the girls. They were thriving in their education, pursuing hobbies, and forming friendships. They laughed without fear, spoke of dreams without hesitation, and embraced life with curiosity and joy. He continued to guide them, always respecting their individuality, encouraging their ambitions, and providing the stability they had long been denied. In turn, they had brought warmth, laughter, and a sense of purpose into his own life, transforming his once lonely world into one filled with meaning and connection. As the story reached its conclusion, the billionaire CEO understood the profound impact of this journey. He had begun as a man burdened by regret, isolation, and the mistakes of the past. Through the presence of the four girls, he had discovered the power of patience, empathy, and love. He had helped shape their lives while simultaneously transforming his own, learning that true fulfillment comes from human connection, care, and the ability to give hope where it was needed most. The four girls, once struggling to survive on the streets, now had a future filled with possibilities, love, and guidance. They had found a family in a man who had once lost everything, but had learned to rebuild his heart through compassion. Together, they had created a story of redemption, hope, and the enduring strength of human connection. The CEO knew that life would continue to bring challenges, but he was no longer alone, and neither were the girls. They had each other, and they had a future shaped by love, care, and the lessons of the past. In the quiet moments, as he watched them sleep, read, or play, the CEO felt a deep sense of peace. The journey had been long, emotional, and at times uncertain, but it had led to a bond that could not be broken. The four girls were no longer just reminders of the past. They were living, breathing proof that love, patience, and care could heal wounds, create hope, and transform lives. And in that realization, he found not just redemption, but a renewed purpose and the promise of a brighter, more meaningful future for all of them.